Jeff, you have 595 videos and you were able to find 10 times in 595 videos where you said you should train hard.
Working hard. When people shy away from failure, they tend to shy away perhaps more than they should. A lot of people could benefit from training a little bit closer to failure.
No, you haven't been saying for the last 10 years to always train to failure, to push hard.
Training to failure.
Bodybuilders tend to overemphasize how important going to failure is, when in reality you just have to be reasonably close to failure, usually within a couple reps of it.
Science-based lifters do optimized exercises, track their weights, and instead of always pushing their muscles as hard as possible, they push themselves in a more controlled way, hard enough to maximize the muscle stimulus, but not so hard that you create too much fatigue. This is basically how I've trained for the last 10 years.
Coach Greg, in today's video, damage control for Jeff Nippard. He recently released a video on Instagram trying to say, hey everyone got it wrong. I've been preaching to train harder than last time for 10 years. In fact, for all of my life. I don't know why people are saying that I promoted training with higher volume and lower intensity. I haven't flip-flopped anything.
You could always be leaving a few reps in the tank, but as long as you're getting within that certain threshold close to failure, which isn't clearly defined, but it's probably somewhere around 3 reps left in the tank, then I think you're pushing yourself sufficiently hard. Again, here you want to avoid failure, so leave at least 2 to 3 reps in the tank. To avoid failure, you just want to be using lightweight. You wouldn't take any of the bench press sets to failure. You would probably leave at least 2, maybe 3 reps in the tank, and then once you get to the dumbbell fly, you would leave reps in the tank until your final set, and then you would take that one to failure. So I would guess that if you were leaving 2 to 3 reps in the tank, then you should see similar hypertrophy.
I haven't flip-flopped anything.
Leaving those few reps in the tank has no downside, unless you leave more reps in the tank than you should, but it does have an upside. It'll allow you to do more high-quality volume, which, if spaced and managed properly throughout the week, will lead to your best gain. On growing more by avoiding failure. So this was another study that kind of lends credence to the idea of using RPE to manage your fatigue, as going to failure all the time does actually seem to inhibit growth, at least according to this study. Personally, rather go with option 4, because pulling back slightly on effort won't significantly hurt your gain. Generally speaking, that's going to mean a moderate to high volume of training, again fine-tuned to your training status and so on, but also a more moderate level of effort, where you're generally leaving 1 to 2, maybe 3 reps in the tank, and occasionally going to failure. So they were leaving up to 2 reps in the tank, and what they found was that muscle growth was more or less the same between the 2 legs. We have the opinion that training to failure has a larger negative impact on recovery than it does a positive impact on muscle growth. You know that when it comes to muscle growth, the difference between going all out, all the way to failure, and leaving a couple reps in the tank is very small. So in other words, the difference between going all the way to failure and leaving a couple reps in the tank is really small when it comes to muscle growth.
I haven't flip-flopped anything.
And I think people who say studies are for pussies or done on pussies, frankly haven't read very many studies. Because you can go from 3 RIR to 0 RIR and not detect a difference in the literature. I would think that it's actually harder to do a very high volume session at an RPE of 7 or 8 than to just go in and go all out on 2 or 3 sets for a body part. Like, it's actually not that hard on a global, like, per workout scale to take a few sets.
But I've always promoted training harder.
Well, no, I think a 5 RIR, like, let's say 5 reps in reserve. Let's say I do my 12 rep max on the squat for 7 reps.
Yeah.
Okay. That's like, let's say 75% of my 1 rep max for 7 reps. You cannot tell me that that set will not be stimulative and difficult.
Training to failure.
Bodybuilders tend to overemphasize how important going to failure is, when in reality you just have to be reasonably close to failure, usually within a couple reps of it. So I think overrated. I think that the research shows that there's not a huge difference in terms of hypertrophy or strength if you go all the way to failure or if you stop a couple reps shy.
I haven't flip-flopped anything.
Science-based lifters do optimized exercises, track their weights, and instead of always pushing their muscles as hard as possible, they push themselves in a more controlled way, hard enough to maximize the muscle stimulus, but not so hard that you create too much fatigue. This is basically how I've trained for the last 10 years. I like to play it a little safe and get a little closer to failure than I probably need to. I usually leave 1 or 2 reps in the tank on most sets, and then push my last set all the way to failure, assuming it's an exercise I can fail safely on. There's a point where too much failure training can cause recovery issues. I think as long as you're getting 1 to 3 reps shy of failure, you're good.
And so I don't know why people are calling me out saying that I've now suggested people to train hard, because I've done so all along. Your idea of training hard is like getting a semi. It's somewhat hard. It's not hard. It's harder. Jeff knows that the average person trains perhaps 6, 7 reps from failure.
6, 7.
That's it. It's not hard at all. Essentially, it's my warm-up sets. Most people go to the gym and train like kitty cats. I previously would have said it started with a P, but people don't like that word.
I think people who say studies are for pussies or done on pussies frankly haven't read very many studies.
And so Jeff is saying, if you train like a kitty cat, that you should train perhaps a little bit harder. But how hard is that? Jeff continuously, not only himself, but with his guests, says to train hard, real hard, 1 to 3 reps in reserve. RIR.
So I would guess that if you were leaving 2 to 3 reps in the tank, then you should see similar hypertrophy across a broad spectrum of rep ranges.
You shouldn't really push yourself because you might not recover from it. We're training, we're natural, and you don't want to overload the central nervous system, and so please be careful. Now, Jeff, the proof is in the muscles, your muscles. How much gains had you made in the previous 5 years in comparison to this one? Azito, for 5 years, Jeff, you never put on any muscle whatsoever. I called you out in a number of videos, and you know it, you even reacted to me.
Studies are for pussies.
Not mentioning my name, because remember we had that conversation and you said, I'm not reacting to you because you have fewer followers than me, and if I mention you, you'll get more followers and so on. But you remember those times. I know that you do. And so eventually, Solomon's former client, you started to train like me. You started to go to failure. You started to lower the volume. And what were those results, Jeff? You started to make some gains. You were literally in a cut and putting on muscle and losing body fat at the same time while in your 30s. And so if training with more volume and less intensity were ideal, if that were optimal, as you science-based guys, you seem to keep saying.
Science-based lifters do optimized exercises, track their weights, and instead of always pushing their muscles as hard as possible, they push themselves in a more controlled way. Hard enough to maximize the muscle stimulus, but not so hard that you create too much fatigue.
Then why were you able to put on more muscle when you lowered the volume and train harder into your 30s? And so it's one of these, Jeff. Either you're on performance-enhancing drugs, use performance-enhancing drugs in the last year, or training harder than last time, aka Coach Greg's HDLT. The motto, the name of my company, harder than last time, that is why you made those gains. And so you can't say for the last 10 years, you've been telling everyone that you should be training harder than last time, that you should train like Mike Mentzer, or perhaps like Dorian Yates or Coach Greg. You did not say that. You suggested in 10 videos that people don't train hard enough and they should train harder. They were training 6, 7 reps to failure. They weren't training all that hard.
I think as long as you're getting 1 to 3 reps shy of failure, you're good.
Now, remember, what have I said? If you're a beginner, perhaps an intermediate, you don't need to go hard. You're going to make gains regardless. But if you're at the intermediate or advanced level, you need to train hard. Drop sets, forced reps, training to failure. That is how I've been preaching it, and you have not. And so Jeff releases this video, and in the comments, hey, train harder, doesn't say to train all out, doesn't say to go past failure, doesn't say to do drop sets, forced reps, to really push yourself. He just says train harder. The people he's talking to are not training all that hard. They're not saying to the guys who do 3 reps in reserve, 2 reps in reserve, 1 rep in reserve to train harder. No, he's saying to people who do a bunch of warm-up sets that they should train more like Jeff. And how hard is that?
Hard enough to maximize the muscle stimulus, but not so hard that you create too much fatigue.
Let's not forget that the people who are commenting, they probably weren't even around when Jeff Nippard started making videos. They're probably teenagers. They likely haven't watched Solomon's video, and so they did not see that Jeff Nippard and Stephanie Buttermore, that they were selling a program, training 50 plus sets per body part. And so why would you tell someone to do over 50 sets when you know that if you go hard, you can't do 50 plus sets? And so by definition, by default, You are saying the direct opposite. No, you haven't been saying for the last 10 years to always train to failure, to push hard. You've only been doing that for 1 year.
Okay, so I'm here editing this video now, and I kind of want to update my answer just a little bit. I still kind of think that training to failure is slightly overrated. However, there's a brand new meta-analysis that did find that on average, training to failure was better for muscle growth than not training to failure.
This past year, and you've done it to sell science-based programs, which essentially is a lie.
To me, if any one variable should wear the crown, it should probably be training hard, right?
Let's start with, when are you going to answer John Bravo's DM? Wait till John Bravo's video comes out. Jeff, are you ready for that? Nate Swaby writes, there's also nothing wrong with flip-flopping. People are allowed to change their minds. This is what Jeff has done. He's flip-flopped his idea and he's changed his mind. There's nothing wrong with that. You just have to admit it. You shouldn't try to cover it up. Remember when Mike had 200 plus mistakes and he had that horrendous PhD thesis? And rather than just admitting it, he said it was the first draft and he tried to cover it up. And all this drama unfolded since then. Why doesn't Jeff say, you know what? Yep, I used to promote doing high volume.
Okay, so I'm here editing this video now, and I kind of want to update my answer just a little bit. I still kind of think that training to failure is slightly overrated. However, there's a brand new meta-analysis that did find that on average, training to failure was better for muscle growth than not training to failure.
And so remember, it's okay to flip-flop based on the science. And here is what Jeff has stated. Yes, I completely agree. As new evidence emerges, you update and refine your beliefs. Could have left it at that. Basically, he'd be saying, you know what? You're right. I used to believe it was higher volume. Now I believe it's higher intensity. I've changed my mind. But no. And I did recently update my stance on volume requirements in a calorie deficit. But the fundamental principles are still the same. And so what Jeff just did is he admitted to flip-flopping, but then saying I didn't flip-flop. I mean, do I have to break it down? Jeff said, you know what? Yeah, I've changed my mind. You can do less volume with more intensity, but only if you're in a calorie deficit, because if you're in a calorie deficit, muscle is built differently. It's magical when you're dieting. What is he then going to say? Yeah, if you're at maintenance calories, you have to train this way. In a deficit, you train this way. And when you're bulking, you train this way. And at 20, you train this way. And at 30, it's that way. 40, it's yet a different way. And males and females, they have to train differently. Oh, right, he already did that. Already said females need to train different. 50 plus sets for a body part. Imagine doing 50 sets for your glutes per week. Really, Jeff, that's how you should train? Oh, and the only time he ever said to train hard, to train to failure, was when he made a mistake, AK video by Solomon. Remember when he had the impossible workout doing multiple sets with 85% of your 1 rep max on the bench press, which was impossible, and he wrote Solomon and said, I'm Jeff Nippard, Solomon's former client, and I don't want you to talk about it. Delete that from here. And remember those comments he deleted on purpose? Why? Why was he covering it up? Comment deleter, wanna be a doctor, but just an imposter. Jeff Nippard.
Jeff Nippard.
Jeff Nippard, study site misleader, program switcher, data glitcher, won't take your picture, spreadsheet believer. Solomon's former client is a 5-4 circle jerker, circle jerker. When you are deleting comments, what does that say about you as a person? And some more comments about this. Jeff Nippard. Nah, we know your opinion changes when you got a new program to sell to gullible people. I'd be willing to bet you've magically never tried a program that didn't work and become something you market and sell. Jeff Nippard, you refine your beliefs based on what the market wants so you can sell. Simple as that. I find no other reason how you could believe that Brad studied odd 40 plus sets per week. Yeah, Jeff was promoting the 40 plus sets per week. He also literally promoted his program, of which it was more than 50 sets per week. And I even think he's still selling it. I'm not sure. Exercise science is a joke. Now that Mike Isertel got exposed, the science-based community is reeling. Just admit science-based equals sales-based. It's literally just branding and marketing. You have historically preached high volume and leaving 2 to 3 reps in the tank for most sets. You still have a video up where you state that Sulik takes way too many sets to failure and that it should only be a small portion of his training. The edited clip is kind of indicative of your problem. You have no accountability whatsoever. You will do anything to avoid valid critique, including ignoring controversy, cherry-picking evidence and taking it out of context, and literally confronting people IRL over fair criticisms. That is what you do, Solomon's former client, Jeff Nippard. He's already told me that years ago on that phone call. Jeff, you remember that call? Don't tell anyone about it, right, Jeff? Don't tell anyone. This is always what you do. Once the cameras are off, like when you called my brother a fuck, read book. Oh, is the camera off? Make sure you're not recording this, right? And when you write Solomon, oh, don't share this with anyone. Delete this. I don't want to be Solomon's former client. Don't mention it. Delete that from your bio.
So why would you send unsolicited, caustic DMs and then try to manipulate the recipient into secrecy? Here's a slap in the face, but don't tell anyone. What's this screwball game that Jeff is playing?
Annoying.
Jeff Nippard. Annoying.
Why?
It's like, I see how he is on camera and I see how he is behind the scenes, and it's a different person when somebody else is like mean off camera, like some of the messages that we had, the choice of words he's used, things he said to my partner, like it's just... And so when I went on the podcast with Kenny Kao and Bradley Martin and I mentioned Jeff Nippard as behind the scenes, the guy that was the worst, I wasn't making this shit up. I was being honest. Shut your ass up, man. You already rich enough, but you're still selling overpriced scams like Turk. It's not a scam. Jeff knows it's not a scam. There's no way he hasn't seen the evidence. He knows about Turkplex. You guys all hate it when I call out Derek because you know it's true. You're sick of hearing it because your hero, you don't want to believe that he would do such a thing. But I've been vindicated. It is true. A Juga Turkistanica from Uzbekistan, 100% money-back guarantee and a $20 gift card. We've been proven. I've tested other products. Other people have tested it. I've saved the chain of custody. And so if we get sued, we win. Point blank, full stop. Hey, aren't you that convicted criminal? Yeah, I am. And so because I had criminal activity in my past, that means that Jeff is innocent. I mean, what's next? You got a speeding ticket in 1984, and so anything you say about Jeff is wrong. You see what an ad hominem attack is? You're trying to say you did this, and so Jeff didn't. If you're saying he is cherry picking, please do make a video on it. Prove your point. We don't all know this is BS. And so, yeah, great suggestion. I was already planning the video. And so I'm even reading your comment right now. And so here's the proof. Here's the proof. You doubt me at this point? How many years have I been doing this? I mean, I feel like you've been doubting me for maybe 100 or even 1,000 times at this point. How many times have I come back and been wrong? A 50-year-old man crashing out over how a random internet stranger makes content is characteristic of weakness. Okay, so Jeff is a random stranger. He just happens to have over 7 million followers and lifted at the gym I went to, that we've known each other from Halifax. How is he a random internet stranger? We've talked to each other a number of times. Now, recently, he's ghosted me for no reason, and I have the proof. And so, now that it's been proven, what do you all think? Jeff Nippard, he just avoids any kind of drama. He never addresses it head on. He never apologizes. Has he apologized yet for the Solomon video? For saying that Solomon just jumped the gun, that he didn't actually have the right draft, that he should have contacted Mike? Did he apologize for that or just delete the comments?
Comment deleter, wanna be a doctor, but just an imposter. Jeff Nippard.
And so Jeff Nippard, the comment deleter, is nothing but a grifter. Do you now get it? And so just because he cherry picks a few statements from hundreds of hours of YouTube videos, that there was a few statements saying, train harder, when it's not even in the correct context, doesn't mean that he's not lying. Subscribe, click the bell button, comment to boost the algorithm. Please like the video if you like. Don't forget to watch one of those 2 bloops. And Algorex for cheaper prices than last time. Doctors can prescribe you in clomiphene. You can get telmisartan, you can get terzipatide, the GLP-1s like Ozempic. And so if you're looking for prices about half of normal and you want to get your blood work done and you don't want a doctor to say no to you, click the link in the description, code Greg, 10% off. And until next time, I am out.